Hey, Ryan, it's Big Perm and my co-host Vic Nasty. We've got you live tonight. How the hell are you, man?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Man, doing well. I was just sitting here talking about VFC 54 from Friday night. Fucking what an awesome show, dude. Just knockout after knockout.
It was a crazy night, huh?
Man, it was. I was sitting at work. I dispatch taxi cabs for a living. And there were 4 fight events on Friday night, and I had all of them going on 4 different screens. But I had the audio on for the VFC show. I love listening to Sean. And after, I don't know, the second fight, I think I turned the rest of them off and just watched VFC. Because, hands down, your show was the best Friday night, brother. It was fucking awesome.
That means a lot, man. I appreciate it. Sean's amazing, isn't he?
Dude, I love listening to Sean. Not only calling fights, but the guy's got the knowledge. He's got the background. And there's other situations where the commentators aren't so knowledgeable, and sometimes it gets kind of boring, and you just end up turning the volume down and turning up some music to watch the fights.
And you know the thing is his life passion is MMA. You know, there's nothing else in the world that I think besides his family that he loves more. And, you know, I just feel very, very lucky to have him and Joe both. They're a good team. They work well together, and I think in the future they're going to be one of the best broadcast commentating teams out there, you know. So it's good to have good guys like that to start out with on your broadcast and then have that consistency and grow with them. And it all just makes the shows go very well together, especially when they've watched, you know, athletes that we have under contract start, like Rocky Mountain Oysters starting our first, you know, broadcast on UFC Fight Pass to, you know, the show we just had, and have been there for each of those fights and watched that growth and that transition over the last 8, 9, 10 months. It's a cool thing to see.
Almost, we were just talking a few minutes ago about kids and having children, and it's a lifelong commitment, and kind of, you know, watching them grow up. And I know this has got to be kind of like your baby, man. I mean, that same sense of satisfaction to watch this thing grow up and just take off, because it definitely has.
Victory is definitely my everything. I'm not even going to lie. I'm going to tell Scott after this, no more scheduling calls on Saturdays or Sundays after the show, because I've been napping all day, and I literally made my girlfriend wake me up about 10 minutes ago so I could be prepped and ready for you guys. But I mean, I put everything into these shows. You know, I put my entire heart, soul, and really mentally and physically exhaust myself to make sure that they're the best they possibly can be. And you know, to hear fans and people like you guys talk about how much they appreciate it makes it all worthwhile.
Oh, hell yeah. And me, myself, I'm such a fight junkie. Ever since I saw my first UFC back in the late 90s, I can't get enough of this stuff. And to see, you know, when Scott reached out to me a few weeks ago, and I was unaware of the 3 shows in 30 days. I didn't have any idea. And I thought to myself, Jesus, that's like a huge undertaking. And something Vic and I were just talking about as we were bringing you in. To do just one show is a massive undertaking, because there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that fans don't know about, like when it comes to vendors and licensing and, you know, keeping fighters healthy and making sure everybody makes weight. But to do 3 of them in 30 days, dude, you've got to have one hell of a team behind you and supporting you to make this all happen. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about. I mean, who do you got in your back pocket working the magic, man?
You know, really, it's a hard one to explain, because going into fight week, there's a number of people that are there, and outside of all the other individuals, I have one patient girlfriend.
No doubt.
She puts up with a lot that allows me to make it through these shows. You know, she kind of keeps my life together on the other side, so I can just focus on work and make sure those things happen. But you know, outside of everything else, inside the company, it's really just me day to day operationally. until we go into fight week, and I have a team of people that show up to help out with the events, and then I have my director, my producers, my cage crew, and all those other individuals. But outside of that, each and every day, it's just me, and this is my full-time job. This is my everything, and it can be a lot at times, but I'm thankful that I work with a bunch of great athletes. I'm thankful that the Nebraska, Iowa, and Kansas athletic commissions that I work with consistently are so easy to work with, because I'm not even going to lie, there was a point where we didn't even have our every single athlete's medicals in until weigh-ins this past weekend, because it was so, the shows were coming up so quick. We had so many athletes that we were, working with, and then more importantly, we had guys falling off, and Mike Plazola fought on November 23rd, and then he also fought this past Friday. We had to get his blood work redone on Wednesday when he showed up in Omaha. So they are also very very much to thank for even making things like this possible, because they work really well with us. But I got a great group of people that have my back, and once again, I'm lucky to have all of them.
Hell yes. Well, Ryan, I want to bring in my co-host. His name's Vic Nasty. Vic, you hanging in over there, bud?
Oh yeah, Ryan, man, it's great to have you on the show, and I love the promotion, and how the ship you run, and the production value. A lot of I really don't want to compare you to anyone else, but a lot of the local stuff and regional stuff you see, if you catch it on the internet or have you, it doesn't have the greatest production value. The fights are hard to watch, but with Victory FC, it's such a tight ship. It's well lit. You can see everybody. The camera work is great, and I just definitely wanted to give you props on that. And I wanted to, give the people that are listening around the world, the people that might not know you that well, a little, look into your background. How did you get all this started? You started out, as a lifelong lover of MMA, and you're working, I guess at a car dealership as the finance manager, and you get into MMA. How the hell does that happen?
Well, originally I was, I'll be honest, in my 20s I was kind of fat. I kind of started, I got into MMA as a means to, have some fun and get into shape. And it's all just gone from there. I had a couple fights early on, started managing a few guys, and I always laugh that, I have the worst ADD in the world at times with certain things, but MMA is the one true love that has always just grasped me and captured my attention, and it's fighting is something that I'm good at. Every single day I wake up and it's all I think about, and it's all I want to do, and I'm very lucky to have found that passion. But in 2010 I had an opportunity to work with Victory, and then the old ownership was kind of, I think they just reached what they felt was going to be their potential or pinnacle, and they had some other investments and things going, and they asked me if I wanted to buy it. I spent every dollar of my life savings at the time to make it happen. I dove head first in, and I treat everything, I give everything my all. What's the point of doing something half-assed if you're going to do it? I think the world has a lot of people that love to talk about all the great things they want to do. Well, I'd rather just go out and make that shit happen.
Hell yeah.
And Victory is a perfect example of that. When I went to the UFC and I went to go on Fight Pass, my shows made a massive transition from when we had our very last show that wasn't on Fight Pass to our very first show on Fight Pass, because when I was going to make my television debut, for me it was years in the making. It was 5 years in the making,
Right.
And it was something where I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right, and I'm going to go all in and put on what I feel is the best show possible that people want to tune in and watch, and also have differences in our organization that when people tune in, it doesn't look like every other show out there, whether it be our lighting fixtures or how we run our broadcast, or even our identity as a whole. To me, an organization needs to be something that makes you unique, makes you different. I look back in the day when there was, I look at I look at the late 2000s, mid 2000s as like kind of the arms race of the MMA generation, where
Definitely.
you had the UFC and the WEC and Affliction and the IFL and Bodog, and they were all making this run, to see, or even Elite XC and all them, who could do something different or who could be the best. And some of the ones I always remember were like the IFL and the WEC, that they had some really, really amazing fights, and they had these concepts that were different, and that's what made them unique. Whether it would be a ring or, how they had their team series and things like that. And I treat Victory no different. I'm such a massive WEC fan that, the first time I ever met Reed Harris, I geeked out talking about, those old fights and everything else. And Ben Henderson was here this weekend talking about, or he was here to corner Rob Emerson, and that was the first time him and I have ever met. But it's so funny how our careers, him as a fighter, me as a promoter, there's so many things that have run parallel to each other.
Right.
And so many times we've been connected, it was very weird that we've never met. For instance, his debut in the WEC was supposed to be another kid that at the time I was managing, Drew Dober, who's now in the UFC. We were offered that first fight with Anthony Njokuani, and at the time we didn't feel Drew was ready, so we passed up on it, and then Ben got signed into WEC. So it's funny for me to go, I feel kind of weird that, because we said no to a fight, you're in the WEC, and your career just blossomed from there. It's so weird to how see the world parallels like that. But I was such a super fan of the WEC, and I was telling him this, that I want Victory to be this, and I've used this term so many times over the last couple of weeks, and because it really means something to me. I really want to be this generation's WEC. I want to be that show that people tune in and go, oh my God, it's not the UFC, but it's really, really high-quality MMA. It's something different that they can attach themselves to, love, and really, really enjoy watching. And that is what I want to do with Victory. That's where I'm headed with Victory, and I believe we've made a good first impression this year with the events we've done.
Ryan,
one thing that I'm sorry, Vic, I wanted to jump in there. One thing that impressed Vic, shut up.
Hey, I'm here as long as you guys need me to be. No need to argue, guys.
Oh no, we like busting balls, man.
I feel like I'm being fought over. It's kind of nice.
Oh man, yeah, he'll get his in due time. But one thing that really impressed me with this weekend's event that I saw, the difference is obviously the square cage versus the octagon or a boxing ring or a round cage. You guys use a square cage, but the one thing that I really noticed that I thought set you guys apart from a lot of other shows was the time that you took between fights with the fighters that were knocked out. And so many times I see in organizations, fighter gets KO'd, and like within a minute, they've got the guy up and are rushing him out of the cage to get the next fight on. But with you guys, you took your time. There was 5, 6, 7 minutes if the fighter needed to lay there. And that really struck me as something positive, that you guys actually give a fuck about the fighters.
Fighter safety to me is a really, really big thing, and in fact, I've actually been pushing on the Kansas, Iowa, and Nebraska athletic commissions in my own, side time. I want to see a rule set be changed for concussion protocol in the future with MMA athletes, because, I think when guys are, people need to really honestly be more educated when it comes to concussions, as well as, when your brain is taking an impact like that, brain trauma, that's not an easy thing to understand. And I wish more people would, because then these guys don't understand what the consequences that there are when you're sparring a few weeks later, when you're even going on a very strenuous run or anything else the week after your fight. It takes time for your body and your brain to recover. And when guys get knocked out like that, and then they're fighting 3, 4, 5 months later, to me that's scary, because you don't understand what you're doing to your brain long term. And I have on staff here in Omaha for our shows, 4 doctors at any given time. We also have a relationship with the Nebraska Orthopedic Hospital here in Omaha. They are a corporate sponsor of ours. And outside of that, we have a situation where if somebody's significantly hurt, we have that relationship with the hospital to where they are transported directly to their emergency room. The doctors that are on hand are able to call in and make sure that those athletes are taken care of first and foremost as soon as they arrive. So yeah, I think athlete health is a big deal for me and for the future of the sport, because a lot of these guys need to realize what they're doing to their bodies.
Yeah, for sure.
So the fact that you noticed that means a lot. I appreciate that.
For sure, man. Last year, I think it was last year, maybe 2 years back, we had Gary Goodrich on the show, and we were talking with Gary a little bit about brain trauma and brain injury and post-fight careers and dealing with, I think they call it dementia pugilistica, I think is what Gary was diagnosed with. But that's one topic in the world of MMA that is near and dear to me, because I see a lot of guys post-career that are dealing with this, and it's something that I think the fans need to be educated on a little more as well. Not only the fighters themselves, but even the fans, because there's a lot of fans out there that just don't understand or just don't get it. Now with the NFL, and their spotlight on concussions, I think it's done a little bit to bring it towards MMA, but just not quite enough. And yeah, again, I just commend you on the work that you guys do with the fighters.
Let me ask you this with the NFL.
Sure.
Anytime you watch a football game and you see somebody knocked unconscious, when are you seeing them play football again? 2 weeks later? How above and beyond? Yeah, that's God. I hate that, but and then more importantly, how the medical care he's receiving at that time, how above and beyond is it versus anytime somebody kind of gets their head rattled a little bit and they're kind of walked off the field. When somebody is knocked unconscious, it's pretty significant in the NFL. I mean, they're putting him on a stretcher and carrying him out, and they're going above and beyond to make sure he's taken care of. Why is it any different in fighting that we treat a knockout as like, oh, it's a normal thing? It's not. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's part of the sport, and we had 3 really big ones this weekend, but I think athlete safety at the same time is those knockouts should be there should be so much protocol that goes into them and making sure that these guys are healthy and safe. It's not even funny, and so many shows around the world aren't doing that. And the thing is you don't have to worry about my show. What I worry about is me booking a kid that I don't know that he was just knocked unconscious 6 months ago, and then he gets knocked unconscious again and dies. That's what I'm worried about, and that's my biggest fear.
I wouldn't even want to imagine that one. Forget about it. Forget about it. Well, Vic, let me throw it back to you. I know I cut you off and kind of interrupted you.
Yeah, I knew I'd get back in there, Perm. But, Ryan, the one thing that excites me is that, Victory FC is now on UFC Fight Pass, and since you've had your last, 3 or 4, cards on there, are you getting any feedback, from around the world, and what are you seeing from the fans and everything?
Okay, so I'm going to be honest with you. MMA fans are the most cruel human beings walking the face of this earth, okay? And I'm the kind of person that, like, if somebody's going to bag on me, I'm going to laugh with them and just take it in stride. It is what it is. I don't even remember what I was listening to. I think I was listening to Joe Rogan's Fight Companion where they were talking about Brett Favre ended up having a dick pic put out in the world, and they were talking about poor man had a little dick, and Brett Favre just went, whatever, shrugged it off, took it with stride. I think when the world is ready to burn you, and we all have our time, especially with the internet nowadays, you have to take it in stride. But Victory is my baby. It's my everything. So I was very, 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 very afraid. I've been on the underground and seen this cruel things that people will put on there and
yes, sir.
And just burn through individuals. And it was a scary process for me going into our first broadcast. So I'm like, fuck, what if they hate us? What if they hate us? What if we're the worst thing that they've ever watched?
Right.
And luckily enough, if you go through any hashtag on any one of our events, people love us. And I attribute that to I have such a heavy hand in every one of our shows. I personally matchmake every show. You know, I do some shows in Iowa that one of my partners there helps with, and then, you know, I have other individuals that kind of, you know, will offer up advice on certain athletes and everything else. But for the most part, I do every fight card head to toe. So for me, I look at it as like, okay, I am a fight fan. What do I want to see? Will that translate to everyone else? And there are a lot of athletes that I've booked that are Division II, you know, national champion wrestlers, or other high level grapplers that I've brought in that have not necessarily translated into the best fights at times, but that's the sport. But more importantly, I really try to go out and find guys that are like, okay, who are the most exciting individuals I can get my hands on? Because once those guys go to the UFC, those are the ones that are going to make the highlights and make the impact, and people are going to go, whoa, where did they come from? And that's what I want Victory to be. And I'm just very lucky, honestly, to have the fans love us. You know, it's been a good journey this year, and you know, you'll get your occasional tweet about, oh my gosh, Sean Wheelock, I hate his voice, or oh my God, Joe Wilk is so annoying. But that's to be expected. You're never going to please everybody. And if you only get one or two of those every event, what's the big deal? You know what I mean?
That's not bad. That's not bad at all.
No, I agree.
Well, Ryan, let's jump in here and talk about the next event coming up December 23rd. It's your third of 3 shows in 30 days, Victory Fighting Championship 55. That's taking place in Topeka, Kansas. It's going to be the finale of this madness that you've undertaken. The fight, again, can be seen on UFC Fight Pass. And in this main event, looking at your website here, you got Jake the Librarian Lindsay taking on Dakota Cochran in a 5-round main event rematch. Now, I've seen Dakota fight before, but I'm not familiar with Jake the Librarian. When it came to matching and making this fight for 55, what was it about these two that made you say, man, this is the fight that's going to be the Mount Everest of all this that we've been doing for the last 30 days?
Well, they fought before. This is a rematch. They fought on our first broadcast, UFC 47, back in January of last year. Jake normally fights at 55. Dakota used to fight at 55. Jake's big 55er, so he makes a big cut. So we did this fight in January. And it was a blast, you know. Jake was cruising to a win. I mean, he was handedly beating Dakota before Dakota hit him with a great right hand and then ended up sinking in a guillotine with like 90 seconds left in the third round to win the first fight. And then I want to say Dakota's won one, lost with one with us throughout the rest of the year, and Jake's won one in May of this year with us. And we actually had set Jake versus the kid from TriStar Gym in Montreal for the main event originally, and then that gentleman got hurt, and then we set him up with another kid out of Missouri, and then he got hurt. And it came down to it where Dakota is
sometimes, isn't it?
It is, and so originally Dakota is a tried and true individual. He will always fight. He will always show up. And the chances of him ever pulling out on anything are few and far between. And I was to the point with this fight card where I was just like, fuck it. I just want a main event that I know is going to be there either.
Right.
So I called Dakota. I offer him the fight. I called Jake Lindsay. I offer him the fight. He obviously wanted that fight back more than anything. They're not fighting for a title, you know, but last time we had 3 awesome rounds, so I was like, you know what, let's get 5 out of it and see what happens. On how they both fought last time, I don't think we're going to see a 5th round again. And to be able to do a non-title fight for 5 rounds, I think is just awesome, especially with 2 high-level athletes like this.
I love seeing fighters and organizations, promotions able to have 5-round fights other than, for title fights or what have you. Because there's a lot of times where, these 3-round fights, you're just begging for one more round, to see what would happen. And now we can do it. And kind of the segue from that, the rest of the fight card, is there any one fight on that card that that I need to be watching out for? You got Trey Ogden taking on Josh Pfeiffer, Joey Deal's fighting Kevin Gray. Out of the rest of the fights, which is the one that I should be watching out for?
I think both those fights are ones that are going to be a lot of fun to watch. We had some injuries.
Fun, man.
I know. We had some injuries. We did lose a fight this weekend. It was actually I found out on Wednesday that Darius Lando was in a car accident, so he's no longer going to be able to fight. And then I found out earlier tonight that Rob Mitchell is also injured, so we actually lost that entire fight. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do there yet. And then we are actually looking for an opponent right now for Bernard Thomas. And I shit you not, after he got done fighting on Friday night, I asked Mike Plazzola if he wanted it. And that would make Mike the first athlete I've ever heard of fighting 3 times in 30 days, all on the same organization.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Alvey comes to mind. Sam's been real busy the last few months. Donald Cerrone is another one of those guys that stays really busy. But I've never heard of a guy actually doing 3 in 30 days.
I remember Chris Lieben. Chris Lieben did something similar during the summer a couple years ago with the UFC, but I don't remember if it was 3 times or if it was just 2 fights and it was boom boom. But honestly, I think he wanted to. I think he was feeling the effects of a 3-round fight at that point in time. He really didn't take any damage, but I think he was just really tired. But him and I were going to chat today, tomorrow, and see what he was thinking. But I think that would be freaking awesome to try to promote. Like, here, look at this, and
fuck yeah. Well, you guys just did with Rob Everson. Rob now has a title in 2 different divisions, which kind of leads me to my next thing. I'm not a big fan of fighters cutting weight. Me, Vic, and our homie Smitty, we go round and round about weight cutting. But what really thrills me are to see these guys that are willing to go up in weight and make a challenge and a run for that title. We saw it in boxing with Hearns and some other legends that have done that. I'm waiting to see who that legend's going to be in MMA.
Rob was a unique situation. So originally going into this last show, we were supposed to have 3 title fights. The welterweight title fight, featherweight title fight, and then the bantamweight title fight. Rob's original opponent at bantamweight got hurt. When I contacted him, we were going to do a non-title fight because he said his weight was being a little funky anyways. He was, he just wasn't. He was like, I was going to make it if I needed to make it, but I don't think he was feeling as confident as he did the first time around. 35 is one of those things for him that everything really needs to go right. But he does look amazing at that weight, in my opinion. So we were going to do a non-title fight at catchweight with another fighter at 140. And then Ryan's opponent got hurt. And then I kind of was searching for somebody for Ryan, and I really couldn't find anyone. And I always thought Ryan and Rob would be a fun fight.
Oh yeah.
And so then I approached Rob and said, hey, I have this opportunity. Somebody just fell off for the 45 title fight. What do you think? And that was only 5 pounds up from what he was originally planning on fighting at. And he's fought at 45 a lot. And then him and Ryan, size-wise, are very similar. Ryan's obviously just a lot thicker. And Rob goes,
yeah, he's built like a fireplace. That guy's solid.
I know. I tell everybody he's 5'5" by 5'5".
No shit.
Just a square block. I'm talking to Rob, and I said, what do you think of this? And he goes, in dead seriousness. And you got to get to know Rob a little bit to understand him, because he can be a little intense at times. And it's not a bad thing. He's just an intense person, especially when it comes to his fights. And he goes, bro, I shit you not, I dreamt about that this weekend. I'm in. He's dead serious. He's like twice in the same night. I woke up in a dead sweat, and the dream was so surreal, and it was everything I'd ever imagined. And he's like, I dreamt of fighting for both titles, and I knew I was gonna win them. And he's like, I'm in. And then I was actually lucky I was able to hold it together. Ryan Roberts had contacted me last week while I was in Vegas for the Ultimate Fighter finale. He actually had hurt his knee. He didn't think it was completely, blown out, but he, was like, it definitely doesn't feel good. And then he was like, I'm going to get an MRI Monday morning. He got a hold of me Monday afternoon. He's like, I'm fighting. And that at that moment led me to believe that this was probably his last hurrah. It was, it was like, what do I have to lose? It's my last fight. He's 38 years old. He's had so many great fights in victory. I think he wanted to get one last one out of the way. So it was a very anticlimactic ending to the fight, but, he at least got to go out, his way, how he wanted to. And Rob is one of the most proud people in terms of holding a victory title, and now 2 victory titles I've ever had out of anybody. So I couldn't be any happier for him. I do wish, we could have had a full capacity Ryan Roberts for him to fight, because I think that would have just been a crazy night in the cage. But Rob definitely came to fight that night. He was all in on that, on winning those 2 titles.
Oh, yes, he was. Yes, he was. Well, Vic, let me throw it back to you, man. I don't want to take up too much more of Ryan's time, but I'm sure you've got a few more questions in you.
Definitely. I got one more quick question. And, for any, fighters that are coming up, anybody that's want to start, in the sport, any combat, sport they're trying to come up in, as an owner and, promoter, matchmaker, what's the best advice, you could give to a would-be amateur and, pro fighter?
Find good people around you that actually care about you.
Right.
Understand that not everybody's out to screw you, especially promoters. I honestly, I can tell you right now, I started out earlier in the year giving people a little bit more leeway with the matchups. This last fight card, I didn't give any leeway. They got the fight I put in front of them. And that's really the way I'm going to start running Victory moving forward with a lot of guys, because at the end of the day, the UFC wants the cream of the crop. They don't want guys that picked their way to the UFC.
Right.
If you look at all the other countries, Brazil, Europeans, some guys out of Asia that come into the UFC with 7, 8, 9-0 records, they're monsters. Well, that's because they fought 7 or 8 other bad motherfuckers to get there. Pardon my language. That's the way I think the sport needs to be. We don't need a bunch of, guys that have kind of
their way to the top.
Yeah, solved a math problem to get their way to the UFC. I don't think that's how the sport is. And then more importantly, once you're there, I don't think you're going to be successful if you haven't been tested. And also, it showed us this weekend, I think this fight card was the most evenly put together in terms of on paper and what I felt in my heart, evenly put together fight card I've ever had. And it just goes to show you that there are guys, and I'm not saying the guys that didn't win this weekend didn't want it, but it just shows you how much more the other one did. And outside of that, I think that the ones that are really destined to be great are going to go back to the drawing board and fix the things that need to be fixed, and they're going to show up better the next time out. And those are the athletes I want, So from that perspective, a lot of these managers and agents are starting to understand, to trust me, that I want to do what's best for their fighters. I'm not here to see certain people win and certain people lose. I want the best of the best, and I'm going to take care of everyone. I'm not going to treat anyone any differently, no matter, who they are or what my relationship is with them. I'm a very fair, rational individual across the board, and I just want to entertain my fans. And at the same time, create and promote the best athletes I can get my hands on before they go to the UFC. More importantly, outside of that, this is a lifestyle. Be prepared to eat clean, terrible food for the rest of your career that's how you make it there. Be prepared to go to the gym every single day. Be prepared to go all in, because if you're not all in, you're not serious, and more importantly, you probably don't deserve it. And the ones that do deserve it are the ones that are going to put in the work every single day and get there. You know, the Ryan Stoddard of the world are the guys that have highlight knockouts for me on Friday, and then they're back at the gym on Monday. Those are the ones that are gonna be a big deal in this sport, and those are the ones I want to work with.
Well, Ryan, I'm gonna jump back in here. I don't want to take up too much more of your Sunday nights. I know, man, Scott has kept you busy these last few weeks doing interview after interview, but
it's been
Scott,
fun. I've actually really enjoyed it.
Cool, man.
He's
listen,
the best.
I'm glad you've taken the time to talk to a couple chuckleheads like us.
Hey, anytime, guys. I'd be more than happy to, and anytime you want to work or talk to any of our athletes, I'd be more than happy to hear that too. I do want to know though, which knockout was your favorite from the weekend? Because how weird is it that you ever see a show that has 3 or 4 highlights like that you get to choose from?
For me, I mean, obviously seeing Killer Kane knock out Patolo, that was probably the best one for me. With our connection, having interviewed him last week, I was telling everybody all week long it's gonna be fucking different. But Sadiq Youssef, I loved watching his fight, and Logan. What's his name? Last name Logan.
Bryce,
there you go. Couldn't remember his first name. God, what a stud he is, dude. That guy is just, I don't know how to describe him. Powerful. Powerful. That's all I can say.
That kid has not had the best luck in his career. He really hasn't. And I can tell you he's put the work in. He's been fighting for me for a while now, since 2012-13. Even then as an amateur, and then he's come in through pro, and his record I really don't think reflects his talent and his work ethic. That's the thing, is like some guys, just have it. Sadiq Youssef has it. He just has it. And then more importantly, that kid puts in the work. And I'm going to tell you a funny story about him here in a second that you guys will really love.
Oh yeah.
But then with Bryce just, he works his ass off, and he wants it. He really wants it, and that's what leads me to believe that he's going to make it there. But Sadiq Youssef, I took him and Robbie Ostovich and Arnold Bernard and a couple other guys to the Terrence Crawford fight last night here in Omaha. I took out all my staff, and we made a night of it, and went and watched one of the best in the world have his way with another opponent. And I picked up Sadiq from the hotel, and me, him, and some of my other staff members went to dinner at this place here in town called Dinkers. It's a really great burger spot. And I bought him dinner, and I bought a couple other appetizers, and we were sitting there, and I said, "Oh man, this right here is my favorite." And I grew up on my grandparents were cattle ranchers, so here in Nebraska, so I grew up eating Rocky Mountain Oysters. It's just something that I've eaten all my life. I love them. You know what I mean? It's as creepy as that sounds. So we're sitting there,
it's gotta
and
be
I'm like, "Oh man, this
taste, man."
it tastes like chicken to me. It just tastes like chicken." So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, "Oh man, this is my favorite. These chicken tenders are the best you'll ever have." And he goes, "Oh really?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So him and his coach are here, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, here, try this." And they're sitting there, and they're like, "Oh wow, this is good." And I'm like, "Right?" And then my buddy John, who helps me with the shows in Iowa, he's my partner over there. His son was there. His name's Cash, and I'm like, "You want a piece?" He's like, "Yeah." And he's looking at it, and he's smelling it. You could just tell that he knew something wasn't right.
Someone right.
And then I was like, "It's good, buddy, eat it." his mom goes, no, tell him what it is. I was like, Sadiq goes, it's an oyster. I just start laughing. And I'm like, yeah, it's an oyster. He's like, wait, isn't that where Rocky Mountain Oysters are? And I'm like, bro, there's no ocean around here.
Right.
And I was like, they're cow testicles. And then Sadiq, who's from Nigeria, coach goes, oh, man, that's messed up. Sadiq goes, I've eaten worse things.
Hell yeah.
Oh, shit.
So, and he loved them. He downed like 2 more of them. It was hilarious. But, you know, when I talk about those guys that won it, Sadiq Youssef wants it. We were sitting there last night having a conversation. You know, I just wanted to know kind of how he got to where he got and everything else. And, you know, he was telling me how he was going to school. And then Lloyd Irvin, you know, where he trains, was asking him what his future really was. And he's like, well, I'm going to school, but, you know, I'm really only going to make my mom happy. He's like, I want to fight. You know, so Lloyd Irvin's like, all right, I have an opportunity for you. And you know, he kind of took him under his wing, and you know, this kid's all in on fighting. And when you hear about athletes that say they train 8 hours a day, that kid probably trains close to 8 hours a day. He's one of the few that actually does it.
And if you're messing around with Lloyd Irvin, yeah, you're training and you're putting in work. That's all I can say.
I'm gonna tell you right now, Sadiq Youssef is gonna be something special. I mean, he's the real deal. He's focused like you would never ever imagine. And last night, and these were his exact words, a lot of things would have to go very wrong for me not to make it to the UFC and to become a world champion. And that kind of drive, desire, he's there. And he belongs there. They're not afraid of any fight. This kid's 3-0, and after his last fight in victory, he's 2-0, they were asking me to fight Grant Dawson, who's like 10-1. Like, they're not afraid of a fight.
Hell no.
I mean, they'll take anything, and for me, as a matchmaker, makes it fun. Devin Turner is not a bad fighter. He's not. He's a physical specimen. His record, once again, I don't think reflects, you know, his talent level. But he's good. He's a very solid person, and he beats a lot of people that, you know, fight for me. Sadiq, that second jab I think broke his nose, and those jabs were vicious.
Yeah, they were just. I was thinking that. I mean, probably one of his best weapons is just that jab. I mean, if you keep that in somebody's face, there ain't shit they can do.
I think that second jab just took Devin Turner completely out of his element. I think at that point he was thinking, what am I going to do? I don't think he knew. I mean, I think he was like, it just shut him down. And I guess I don't know if you guys noticed this weekend, Roy Jones Jr. was in attendance, sitting next to me, and he'd come out to watch the fights. He was obviously here to commentate for HBO. And during that fight, all he could talk about was Sadiq's jab. And then once the fight was over, he goes, I want to meet that kid.
Hell yeah.
Because he was like, that's some of the best boxing I've seen out of an MMA guy. He was just beyond impressed with Sadiq. So it was really fun and interesting to see that and hear that. But that kid is special. He's very special.
Hell yes, he is. And Ryan, you know, Victory Fighting Championship, especially after watching this weekend's event, has made a true fan out of me. You know, we had Sean on the show earlier this year, maybe the end of last year, right as he was starting to do the work with you guys. And we had talked about it, and I was real interested to see how things would come along. So I've been watching here and there, but this weekend's show, dude, was definitely the one that's made a fan out of me. And, brother, I cannot wait for December 23rd, VFC 55. Oh, yeah. Man, I cannot wait. And we've only got a minute or two left with you tonight, Ryan. I mean, fuck, I could probably keep you going for another hour, but I got some other shit I got to get to. Oh, man,
that means a lot, guys.
Just to talk to you.
That means a lot. I'm glad you guys have enjoyed it, but I can honestly tell you that we're just getting started. I'm going to take a nice little break. after this to focus on some things, retool. I want to change some things up in next year's broadcast and add some other nice elements to the show. I don't know if you noticed last night during the main and co-main event, we actually had the athletes weigh in once they arrived at the venue, and then we were talking about that during the broadcast, what they weighed in at officially, and then what they weighed in at when they showed the venue. I think those are interesting things that can make a difference in every fight, and I think fans want to know. Rob Emerson weighed 158. Ryan Roberts was 168.
Well, now,
so
Ryan,
to be able to
you saying that's just made me screw up my next 15 minutes of my show here. Because just last night, I think it was last night, me and Vic and our buddy Smitty, who will be coming on here, supposed to be on here in about 15 minutes, we were talking about the weight cut. And it just drives me bonkers. As a fan, it drives me bonkers when I see a guy fighting at 145, and then he weighs in and hits the weight, and then the next night, it looks like big brother fighting little brother because one of them's packed on another 30 pounds. And I had suggested limits as to how much you can add after you've officially weighed in. It kind of drives me bonkers. It's one of my pet peeves, I guess.
Well, I'm not in the position to tell guys how much they can rehydrate to, but to be able to give some fans insight and to give people something to talk about during the broadcast, to me that is something that I think people are interested in seeing and could make a big difference in each broadcast and make things a little more exciting.
Oh, yes, to say the least. Well, listen, Ryan, I've got to wrap it up, man. There's so much more I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to talk to you about the Ali Act, and there's so much more I wanted to get into, but we'll have to do that another night, my man. Really,
anytime, man. I'm more than happy to come on the show whenever you guys want.
Fucking right, man. I'd love to hear that. With this last minute I got left with you, I just wanted to give you the opportunity, to let our listeners know how they can follow along, how they can find you, if they got questions, where to send them.
Well, you can find me on Facebook, which is turning out to be a rough thing. I feel like, how women talk about men blowing up their inbox? Fighters have been blowing up my inbox like I'm the hottest, sluttiest chick in the world. So
finally, I'm there.
And back in the day, I used to think it was like, oh, this is awesome. It's making my job as a matchmaker that much easier. And then you get overloaded. You're just like, wait a minute. So I'm hopefully never going to get my dick pics sent to me. I'm really hoping that never becomes a thing. But for the most part, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I'm not on Twitter, but Victory is. And our Facebook is facebook.com/Victory Fighting Championship. And then Instagram and Twitter is at Victory Fighting, and Snapchat's at Victory Fighting. We actually do a lot with our athletes on Snapchat. It's one of my favorite things to do. We let guys take over, and anytime Rafion Stotts takes over the Snapchat, be prepared to be entertained and laugh your ass off for the whole day. He is a character.
Hell yes, man. Well, Ryan, listen, I've had such a blast tonight. Vic Nasty, how about you?
Oh yeah, been a hell of a time. Thank you, Ryan.
Hey, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome, man. Ryan, we'll definitely have you back on. Maybe after the new year, we can bring you back, talk about future plans after you get a little bit of a respite. But most
Looking
importantly,
forward to
man, just hell yes. For myself, Vic Nasty, everybody listening tonight, I want to say thanks to you, and also a special thanks to Scott Zer for hooking it all up. Really appreciate it, guys. Take care and have yourself a hell of a night, bud.
You too, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Later on.